to the first of hopefully many trainings that that PCDP will be having for you. This time, we are so excited. We are starting with Greer Warren, who is going to be talking to you about the basics of our government, which, you know, we all think we know, but she's got lots of new ripe information. Before we start, I just want to give people a heads up about the next training we're going to be doing, which is going to be relation-based voter outreach training and canvassing. And Jackie Barrett's going to do the training, and it's going to be on June 5th from 4 to 5:30. Watch your email for the invitation. So with just some, you know, some just basic information, everyone is going to be muted. If you would like to be unmuted during the question and answering, if you go to the bottom of your screen, you will see among all of those different choices, something that says reactions. If you click on that button, it will show you a raise hand. Given there's so many people, it's going to be very hard to be able to see who's raised their hand, so that the best way to do it is to click on that button, and then it shows up with the participants, and it's easier to see it that way. But during the whole presentation, you can use the chat to throw your questions in. Gail Kamaris is going to be monitoring the chat, and she will be passing on those questions to Greer every once in a while. So I am going to turn it over to Greer to do their presentation.
Thanks, Linda. Hi, everybody. I'm Greer Warren, and we don't have, people are texting me. I don't have slides. I just get up here and talk faster than Martha McSally. But what you should have is Miranda sent out a link to two documents. One is an outline of basically the structure of the federal, state, and local governments. And the other is a one page of URLs, links, websites that I'm going to be referring to that's very handy. It's everything from the US Constitution to the website for the city of Tucson and sort of everything in between. So I want to say a couple things in as a preface to my presentation. This is designed to be a bare bones talk about the structure of our federal, state, and local governments. It's not meant to be a 12-week class, and it's not going to go into immense detail. My information originally came from extremely public sources, things like Wikipedia, Ballotpedia, VoteSmart, the things that are on your page of links. And so if I say something and you think, gee, that's interesting, you have right in your hands the ability to look up more information about it. We want you as precinct committee people and volunteers to be informed so that when you are interacting with your family, friends, neighbors, your precinct, canvassing, that you have the facts at hand. This presentation is geared towards Pima County and the city of Tucson. Can you guys see me? Because I just am seeing a white screen. Can you see me?
Gail Dunn needs to do something with her screen because I think she just shared it.
Don't share any screens. Okay. As I said, this presentation is geared towards Tucson and Pima County. And so if you are a resident in another county or town, like if, for instance, if you are from the Pinal County part of Marana, this local section may not apply to you, but you have the ability to find out those facts for your own town. New voter ID cards were mailed last week. Everyone should have them showing your new districts for Congress, the Arizona legislature, Pima County, and the city of Tucson. And lastly, and very importantly, this is an embarrassment-free zone. Do not hesitate to ask questions, because I could go on acting like everyone's supposed to know this, but that's not the case. And why do I know that? Because my qualifications for this is that I'm a citizen, I'm a patriot, and I'm a fairly intelligent person with a need to know. And in December of 2016, is that my hair was on fire, and I heard people saying things like what Donald Trump was going to do with the stroke of a pen. I thought, that doesn't sound right. So I went back and revisited the civics of my youth. It has been a long time since many of us took a civics class. And additionally, many of us are not from the state of Arizona, and we have never been formally educated about how the state of Arizona works. I've been here for 34 years, and I still had to do a great deal of research to get this into some form that I could give it to you. And some of you I know have been here a lot less time than that. I want your takeaways to be how the federal, state, and local governments are structured, how your vote matters in each branch of government, how you can reach out to the appropriate government entity to make your voice heard, and why it is important to vote in each and every election and all the way to the end of the ballot, the whole ballot, as we say, and the extent of what your personal sphere of influence is. Okay, so every vote counts. I want you to ask any questions that you want. Who we vote for, I mean, this is like ridiculous on me in saying this, because so many of us know so much more than we did, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago. And we know more today than we knew yesterday. And I don't think I need to tell anyone today, after the events of yesterday, that your vote directly translates into your personal quality of life, the quality of life in your community, the quality of life for the planet. Politicians have a responsibility to listen to what their constituents, the voters, say to them, and you have a responsibility to let them know. You are a citizen of a neighborhood, a town, a city, a county, a state, and the country, and you have a responsibility to know how this government is structured, how it operates, and how you can have a voice. And you can't be a bystander. It's just, I think we know that apathy kills. And I want to make a big point here is that while big money and dark money can get poured into elections, in fact, nothing actually stands between your intellect and your vote. You have the power to research and decide for yourself. So that's very important, is that you and your vote are like this, and you can decide what's coming between these two hands. So I want to talk about civitas. The word civitas, it's a Latin word, and it's the body of citizens who constitute a state, especially a city-state, a commonwealth, or the like. And it also means citizenship. It's imparting shared responsibility. English words from this root are citizen, city, civil, civilization, and yes, civics. You hear the word activist a lot, and so we don't want to be demonized by that word, because activism simply means action. Calling your congressperson, signing a petition, getting your neighbors together to hatch out a plan of what you're going to do. It simply means action. But what it does not mean is sitting in a warm bath of outrage and complaining. And I think many of us have learned that in the last 5 or 6 years. So citizen activism in the United States has produced, let's start with the Declaration of Independence, women's suffrage, the weekend, workplace safety. I mean, we could go on. Activism created all of that. So that's who you are, your voters, your citizens. Now, I know my outline of the structure of the government starts with the federal, but I'm going to turn that around. I'm going to start with the state while we still have a brain in our heads. I'm going to talk about the structure of the state government first, because frankly, I think that is extremely the most important thing this year, because of the whole slate of state offices that we're going to be voting for this year. So if you could turn in your outline to the part that's talking about the Arizona state government. See, I do talk faster than Martha McSally. So creating the state of Arizona, Arizona Territory was authorized to hold a constitutional convention in 1910. And there was a constitution that was drafted and submitted, and it was originally approved by the US Congress. Now, originally that would have been enough, but there was a change made about that time so that New Mexico and Arizona did not just congressional approval was not enough. The president had to sign it too. And President Taft didn't like the progressive flavor of our Constitution. And there was something about a provision where judges could be recalled. He didn't like that. So the Constitution was kicked back. They took out the provision about the judges, and President Taft signed the approval for Arizona statehood on February 14th, 1912. As a matter of interest, on November 5, 1912, the first general election after that, the first amendments to the Arizona Constitution were submitted to the voters. Two of these were provision about recalling judges and women's suffrage. So that's a good thing to know. A lot of things in our Constitution were a product of excesses in the territorial government, and our Constitution was essentially a reforming document. It is very easy, well, relatively easy, to amend the Arizona Constitution. It has been amended 156 times since 1912. And we're going to talk about how that happens with citizen initiative. I want to mention a very good resource for learning more right at the start about the history of the Arizona Constitution. And that is a book called Understanding the Arizona Constitution. It's on your list of links, the second edition, which was in 2010. And it's written essentially for sort of like a first year community college class. So it's basically at the high school level. It's very easy to read, and it will tell you many wonderful and wacky things about how our government is structured. So Arizona has the familiar branches that we know from just civics. It has the executive, the legislative, and the judicial. Arizona additionally has two bonus entries, which are the ACC, the Arizona Corporation Commission, and the Independent Redistricting Commission, which we also know a lot more about than we knew a year ago. So the executive branch of the Arizona government, there are 7 elected state offices, and they are the 5 members of the Arizona Corporation Commission who serve staggered terms, the Arizona Secretary of State, mine inspector, superintendent of public instruction, treasurer, attorney general, and governor. These are all up for election this year in 2022. There's also some appointed positions like the insurance department and the commissioner of lands and other things like that. The governor of Arizona is elected for a 4-year term, is limited to 2 consecutive terms. Doug Ducey was elected in 2018 for his second 4-year term, so he terms out. There is no office of lieutenant governor in Arizona, although the Republicans in the legislature put up a bill every single year trying to get a lieutenant governor's position. Doesn't happen, not here. There's only 5 US states that don't have a lieutenant governor. What we have instead is the second in the line of succession, or the next in line of succession, is the Secretary of State, which is a separately elected position. Now, here's a fun fact to wow your family and friends with. Because of a string of deaths in office, resignations, impeachments, just general hoo-ha, Arizona has not had a governor whose term both began and ended in the normal election circumstances since 1975. That's a long time for a bunch of weird gubernatorial terms. This string will be broken by Ducey if he gets through the rest of his term. So, as Arizona is one of 6 US states with no or sometimes, at least since I've been here, Arizona has elected
Excuse me for
what?
interrupting, but you froze about 30 seconds ago.
What was I saying?
You were just ending up with Ducey finishing out his term.
Okay, I'm back to no lieutenant governor now. So there's no lieutenant governor, and what makes that interesting is the Secretary of State is elected separately, and often it has been that the Secretary of State is a different party than the governor. They don't run as a ticket. So this is interesting because we elected Katie Hobbs as Secretary of State in 2018, which is probably why Ducey didn't appoint himself to the McCain seat. Well, that's my theory anyway, because then Arizona would have had a Democratic governor. This, of course, happened in 2009 when Janet Napolitano, who was a Democrat, left to become Secretary of Homeland Security, and Jan Brewer, a Republican, became the governor. And it flips back and forth. If anyone's been around long enough to remember Rose Mofford, terrific rose with hair. She became governor as a Democrat when Evan Meacham was impeached in the late 80s. Okay, another constitutional oddity is that anytime the governor leaves the state, even on official business, if he goes for a cup of coffee in Lordsburg, the Secretary of State is temporarily the head of state. And this is because in the territorial government, there was one governor of the territory, John Fremont, who never set foot in the state of Arizona. So the duties of the governor are typical of an executive of anything. He has the duty to enforce the laws. He can pardon criminals, this sort of thing. But most importantly, what he has for our purposes is he has the power to veto, and he has the power of confirmation of specifically of appellate judges. So we'll get to that in a minute. And that's very important to remember because Doug Ducey has played a long game here. He does have the power to veto, but because our majorities in the legislature are so very, very narrow, if he vetoes something, it almost certainly would never get overridden, not the way it's done now. So that's the main thing this governor can do. He can veto and he can confirm. He can call the legislature into extraordinary session on his own or upon the request of 2/3 of the two houses. And this can happen when the legislature is either in or out of session. And what this means is that they would put all of the other business aside. I think we did it in the opioid crisis. I think we did it after Parkland, and actually not much came out of it except for 2 weeks. They talked about something else. Excuse my cynicism. He has to appear before the legislature at least once each session for a state of the state address. He has many, many appointments, maybe upwards of 2,000 appointments to make as the head of departments, such as, for example, the State Forestry Division, the Office of Tourism, the Arizona Historical Society. He confirms the leaders of these organizations. So basically, your influence in the executive branch in Arizona is voting in the primary and general elections every 4 years, contacting the governor to voice your opinions during his term, especially after legislation has been passed and is sitting on his desk to sign or not sign. If he signs it, I believe he's got X number of days to sign. And if he doesn't sign within that X number of days, it becomes law anyway. And that's actually a distinction that's made when you're looking at the summary of the legislature for the year, is how many things became law without him signing it. Okay, that's the executive. Are there any questions about that, Gail?
Do not have any.
Okay, everyone's probably stunned by how fast I'm talking. So the next thing I want to talk about is the Arizona State Judiciary System. The stack goes like this: Superior Court, Court of Appeals, Supreme Court. In Pima County and Pinal County and Maricopa County, our actual influence on the makeup of our state judges is fairly limited. Judges are not elected in counties with more than 250,000 people, population. They are chosen as a product of merit selection and then must stand for retention. And that's where what we see on our ballots is these retention elections. Counties with less population can elect to join this scheme, as Coconino County did in 2018. After appointment, a judge serves for 2 years and then must go into a yes/no retention election in the next general election. If they're retained, they go on to serve a 4-year term. In the other 11 counties, judges run in partisan primaries followed by nonpartisan general elections. Interim vacancies are filled through gubernatorial appointment. So our influence in the courts as citizens of Arizona for Supreme Court and Appellate Court, and here in Pima County for Superior Court judges, is secondhand. It's basically who we elect as governor. These merit selection teams, they're called Commission on Appellate Court Appointments. There's I think 4 or 5 of them for various levels. They're composed of 16 members who serve staggered 4-year terms. And the membership includes 10 non-attorneys who are called public members, 5 attorneys, and the chair, who is the Chief Justice of the Arizona Supreme Court. Citizens are actually encouraged to apply to be public members. You don't have to be a lawyer. These are volunteer positions. And if you go to azcourts.gov, you will find out how you too can apply to be a member of these appellate court commissions. But Ducey has kind of packed these, and he is the one who expanded the court from 5 to 7. And he's played a long game on this. And so your influence in this judiciary system is who you elect as governor largely. Currently, the Commission on Appellate Court Appointments has 0 Democrats. So there you have it. Appellate jurisdiction, the Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court are the 2 appellate courts. The appellate courts have jurisdiction to review trials and decisions appealed to them. There are 2 divisions of the Court of Appeals, 22 judges that are selected like the Supreme Court judges, and they hear most of the appeals that come from the Superior Court, except for death penalty appeals. And some cases involving elected officials and disputes between counties, which go directly to the Supreme Court. To appeal a decision from the Court of Appeals, the appellant must file a petition for review by the Supreme Court of Arizona. This is the highest court, and the court currently has the 7, 1 Chief Justice, a Vice Chief Justice, and 5 Associate Justices, and they evaluate the petitions for review and decide whether they're going to hear the case or not, just like the US Supreme Court does. An Arizona Supreme Court decision is the final word on a case that is brought in the state court system. If a federal case has constitutional elements that have been brought out during the trial, such as equal protection under the law, civil rights cases, as long as that is established as part of the case in the appellate process, the Supreme Court decision can be appealed to the US Supreme Court. And the most famous one that we've all heard of this is the Miranda decision in 1963, which we've seen on like a million cop shows, where somebody has to be informed of their rights. That happened in Arizona in the 1960s. So that is your influence in the state court system. When we talk about Pima County Superior Court, that is the state court system. Each one of these 15 counties has a superior court. And even though it's called Pima County, it's the state court. Okay, this is the important stuff. I might slow down a little bit here. We're going to talk about the legislature in Arizona. A lot of us know more about this than we did a couple of years ago. We have what is called a citizen legislature. It's on the face of it a part-time legislature that was originally in 1912 meant to meet once every 2 years for a couple of weeks. The pay is very low. It's essentially a full-time job now for $24,000 a year, although they did up the per diem recently so that people who are not from Maricopa County, who have to rent apartments and that sort of thing, do have a bit more of a per diem to defray their expenses. The session starts in the second Monday in January of each year. We are now in the 55th legislature. There are 2 regular sessions, the one that happened last year and the one that happened this year. We're in the 2nd session. The regular session is expected to go for 100 days, but in fact will run until a budget is passed and signed by the governor, which is technically the only job the legislature has, is to pass a budget. So we go on with this nonsense all year long until suddenly it's like, why, look at this. This is Memorial Day. We have to pass a budget. So we're clocking in at day 136 right now. The day is 136. There are 30 legislative districts in Arizona, each of which is called this is political science now, a multi-member constituency. This means that each district elects 1 state senator and 2 state representatives for a 2-year term. Now, unlike the US Senate, which is an entire state, and the congressional districts, which are a subset of that state, the way we do our legislature is the exact same group of people are voting for the senator and the 2 reps in their legislative district, which tends to make each district have what kind of one flavor. When some of us may remember Todd Clodfelter got in LD10 a couple of years ago, but that's kind of weird, frankly, although there's strategies for making that happen. This is very important to know. The entire state legislature of Arizona is up for election every 2 years. The entire legislature. We hold this in our hands. Since 1992, legislators are term limited to 8 consecutive years in office. That's 4 terms. However, they can run again after 2 years, or they can run for the opposite house than the one in which they serve. So after I've done my 8 years in the House of Representatives, I flip over and run for the Senate, and I'm there for 8 years. Then I can flip and run for the House of Representatives. That's how you end up with people who are in the legislature for 25 years. 60 reps, 30 senators. Each state senator and rep is assigned to at least one committee in their respective chambers. Like other upper houses of state and territorial legislatures and the federal US Senate, the Senate can confirm or reject gubernatorial appointments to the state cabinet, commissions, and boards. So that's a big piece of influence there. Your voter ID card tells you what LD you are in, as does the Pima County Recorder's Office. Let's talk about the Recorder's Office. I haven't been to their website too recently, but I know that when you used to log in, there was like this banner along the side, and you could check your voter registration there, which is something I highly recommend doing, like 2 months before every election. So we don't want, so LD, legislative district. We do not want to mix this up with CD, the congressional district, which is the US Congress. More about that later. If you don't know who your legislators are, you can go to AZLeg, that's AZLEG, .gov. Find my legislator, you can find that. The way the legislature of Arizona functions has changed in the last 112, whatever it is, years. And what I'm describing is how it works now. So the House Speaker and the Senate President would be the Lieutenant Governor if we had one, but we don't. House Speaker and Senate President are officially elected by majority vote in the House and the Senate at the start of each 2-year session. In fact, they're selected before that, and we know who they're going to be. The Speaker for the 55th Legislature is Rusty Bowers, I'm saying LD 25, but I don't think it's LD 25 anymore. He's from the Phoenix metro area. And Karen Fann, Fann, is the Senate President of the 55th Legislature, and she's from Yavapai County. So how bills get through the legislature? I know a lot of you are probably have participated in the request to speak system, which is a unique way that Arizonans have a way of communicating their opinions about pending legislature. But I'm just going to go through this really fast. This is an RTS training. Come back to me in January for RTS training. Basically, bills get dropped. They are dropped at the beginning of the session. And a vast majority of them never see the light of day. For example, in 2021, bills, memorials, and resolutions introduced in both chambers came to 1,774 entities. 475 of these were transmitted to the governor, and he signed 447. So the floor is littered with 1,300 dead bills. Thank God, in some cases. The time is very short for legislators to consider bills in committee. It's usually by like the middle of March, committees stop. So it's important to know that the House currently, the Republicans have a 1-seat majority, 31 to 29 in the House, which means it only takes one vote to kill the majority. The Senate has got 16-14. Again, it takes one vote to kill the majority. And we saw this today, or was it yesterday, when Paul Boyer crossed the aisle and voted with the Democrats, I don't know, to kill some voter Dropbox bill or something. I mean, something we all want. like 80% of people want. So that's important to note. There are no ties in the Arizona legislature. So it's not like the Senate, the US Senate, where Kamala Harris can throw a vote, make a vote and break a tie. If it's tied, it's dead. It needs the 1 vote majority to do it. Republicans, of course, have the majority in all the House committees and in all the Senate committees. So the life cycle of a bill. Arizona's legislature has been called, and I quote, a labyrinth filled with dead ends and quicksand. There are many more ways for a bill to die than to pass. And usually the graveyard of most of these bills is the standing committees, which is what we do with RTS as we address the standing committees. You'll see terminology of the readings. The first reading of the bill is when the bill is introduced in the chamber. The second reading is considered to happen in committee. And the third reading happens between committee of the whole and the official vote. And I'll talk about that in a minute. This is the ways a bill can die. The chamber leader can refuse to assign it to a committee. It's dead. The chamber leader can assign it, but refuse to first read it. It's dead. The committee chair can refuse to put it on an agenda. It's dead. The committee can vote it down. It has to pass all the committees it's assigned to. And the bill can die between committee of the whole, which is floor debate, and the third reading, which is the floor vote. It can die in all those places. Rusty Bowers, the speaker, was pretty funny. What was the bill? The bill was something about getting rid of all mail-in voting or something at the beginning of he assigned it to like 13 committees, which is like putting a stake through its heart. He thought that was very funny. When a bill is on committee agenda, that's when we have our input in the request to speak system. And so I urge everyone to take that training in January when it's offered by us, by me, and other people in Pima County Dems, and the Civic Engagement Beyond Voting. And those links are on your page of links. So basically, without going into the detail, the bill's introduced, it's assigned to committees, it goes to committee of the whole, it is debated, it goes to a floor vote, and then it goes to the governor. Well, no, it doesn't. If it goes through all that in the House, then it gets thrown over to the Senate. If it passes one chamber, it goes to the other chamber. It can die in all the same ways in the other chamber as it could in the first chamber. If it's passed by both chambers and it's been amended anywhere along the way, because it can get amended right up to committee of the whole. It can be amended in committee of the whole. The House and Senate versions have to be conformed between them before they go to the governor for signing. And that's the way it is in the federal committee too. So there's something called a strike all amendment, which I'm just going to go into really quickly because people are so horrified when they hear about it. Basically, a strike all is when you take a bill that has been heard by at least one committee and hasn't passed. And think of it as a blue Toyota on the side of the road. The blue Toyota, someone comes along and says, I think that blue Toyota is perfect for my purposes. And they painted a different color, they put a different engine on it, they changed the tire and they changed all the upholstery, but it still has the same VIN number on it. That's essentially what a striker is. And so you can say, oh, let's have this bill that says you can't feed onions to dairy cows. Oh, it died in committee. So what they do is they come and take it. And the next thing that we know, it's still called onions and cows. It still has the bill number 2345, and it's a transgender bathroom bill. And I don't think I am overstating that. It does not have to be germane to the original bill. And so this is like zombie bills. So when I say these bills are dead, they're only dead when the gavel comes down to end the session, because they can be brought to life like a zombie. There's reasons for strikers. There's a very short deadline for introducing bills, just a couple of weeks. Strikers, this is the most benevolent interpretation. Strikers would allow legislators to circumvent this short time period. So for example, if I'm working across the aisle with someone on a justice reform bill, and that time has come and gone for introducing a bill, we might continue to work together with the thought that we'll pick up one of these dead bills and use it as a striker later on. That's the most benevolent example, but most of the time it's pretty nefarious. This is not unique to Arizona. There's also, if you go to azleg.gov and the banner across the top, it says bills, you can go in there, you can actually see a list of all the strikers. It's not rare. In 2018, 123 strikers were introduced and 107 of them passed. The legislators are also not required to release the text until 2 days before committee hearing. So that's why you need like civic engagement beyond voting or some other legislative analysis group keeping an eye on these things for you. So the bill has passed both houses. It's been conformed. It goes to the governor. He can sign the bill into law. He can veto the bill, or he can do nothing, in which case it becomes law without his signature. And I'm trying to think why he would do that, except plausible deniability, but I don't know. There's also AZ Capital Television, like C-SPAN, which is accessible via the azleg.gov. And you can also go in there and you can look at committee hearings, and you can see a lot of stuff on that azleg.gov. So your influence in the legislature, voting for people who reflect your values and staying on top of them at all times during the session while things are in committee. And even now you can be phoning and emailing your legislators. One of the benefits in Arizona is that it's very possible to get to know your legislators in Arizona. It's not like someone mentioned California, where there's like zillions of people in every legislative district. We don't have a very large population here. And so you can go to, for example, LD10 used to do this, and I certainly hope LD18 will consider doing it too. In February, March, and April, they did these town halls, and they used to be live in person at libraries, but they were on Zoom the last couple of years, where they were basically giving you a legislative update. And because of the way we elect people, those were mostly Democrats for LD10 standing up there. But in the first couple of years I was going to them, there was a Republican there too. So it couldn't be partisan. It had to be factual. But it was I learned more going to those town halls about how the legislature works than I ever did just reading books. So, questions?
You're clear so far.
All right, everyone is stunned. Okay, I want to talk about, so that was the executive, the judiciary, and the legislative branches. I want to talk about the Arizona Corporation Commission, which is kind of weird. It's this kind of hybrid thing. It exists outside of that executive, legislative, judicial structure, although some people will describe it as an executive office. It is not an executive office. It's authorized by Article 15 of the Arizona Constitution, and it's essentially its own branch of the government. Its origin was as a railroad commission to set carriage rates for railroads crossing the state. And a lot of the language, if you go read the Arizona Constitution, refers to cars, like railroad cars. But I'll tell you what it does in a minute. We're only one of 14 states with elected commissioners. Arizona Constitution explicitly calls for an elected commission as opposed to a governor appointed commission, which is standard in most states, because the drafters feared that governors would appoint industry friendly officials. Now, when I first started giving this talk in 2017, 4 out of the 5 commissioners, all Republicans, were under federal investigation for taking campaign money from the utilities they were supposed to be regulating. So this was expanded from 3 commissioners to 5 commissioners in 2000, the year 2000. They served staggered terms. We voted for 3 seats in 2020, and we will vote for 2 seats this year. And there is Sandra Kennedy and what's Kuby's first name?
Lauren Kuby.
Lauren Kuby. They're running kind of as a team, as a Democratic team. We do have 2 Democrats on the commission now. And I love this because I love talking about the state offices. The requirements for being an elected official in Arizona are pretty small. Commissioners must only satisfy the standard requirements for Arizona state officers, which is they must be at least 18 years old, a citizen of the United States, and be able to speak English. They're regulating our utilities. And that's true actually of all the state offices. with the exception of the mine inspector and the attorney general. So here's what the ACC does, very, very important. Regulates public utility companies, and that is water, electricity, natural gas, and telephone, including final decisions for granting or denying rate adjustments. They regulate the incorporation of businesses and organizations. They are sort of like a state securities exchange commission, licensing brokers and dealers, investment advisors, and they also still deal with railroad and pipeline safety. Now, I'm going to get into a little political science because this is really important. The Arizona Corporation Commission is very powerful. Every person that pays an electric or water bill is affected by the rate setting rules. APS, Unisource, TEP, all of the utilities pour vast sums of money into these races and earn incredible profits on the backs of every consumer in Arizona. I know I sound like a raving communist. This is just like, the commission in Arizona is a textbook case of what is called regulatory capture. And they don't want engaged citizens and organizers to get involved. So what regulatory capture occurs because groups or individuals with a high stakes interest in the outcome of a policy or regulatory decision can be expected to focus their resources and energies in attempting to gain this outcome, while members of the public, each with only a tiny individual stake in the outcome, will ignore it altogether. So if you are told that your electric bill is going to go up $11 every month, many of us are in a position to maybe not even notice that. But think about what that is doing for the utility companies. It's bazillions of dollars. So all rate increases are under the purview of the ACC. The utility monopolies are to be controlled and are supposed to be controlled and regulated for the public benefit. But then the trade-off for the privilege of monopoly should be that the profits are guaranteed. But this gets perverted because they're dealing with shareholders. And sometimes the owners of like APS and TEP are international corporations and their shareholders are not us. And while I do think that people have the right to buy stock and make money off their investments, I don't have to be happy about that. If the utilities want to expand solar, which they clearly do, and therefore their profits, they're going to keep homeowners from expanding their own systems. So they're all for the big solar farms, but less and less you get a benefit from putting solar on your own rooftop. So that's my rant about the ACC. You need to pay attention to who's running for the ACC commission because you can vote for people who will act as you wish them to determine the state will go in encouraging or discouraging development of non-traditional energy sources. Your vote should be determined by whether you think that the ratepayers of Arizona should have a full voice or whether these shareholders in God knows where should have a large voice. So your vote matters for the ACC, and that is way down the ballot. I mean, once we get through these big, sexy races like governor and senator, it's like, who the heck are these people? Well, if you want to know who these people are, one thing you can do is call, for example, your local office of the Sierra Club. And you can say, does the Sierra Club have a stand? Who are they endorsing? What is their stand on these people? You can find out, because remember what I said, your vote, your intellect, there's nothing there but what you put there. So you can do some research as to who these candidates are, where they came from, what their background is, and whose interest they really have in mind. You can participate in the ACC. There are monthly meetings. Citizens can testify. Agendas are online, azcc.gov. And there's a call-in number where you can call in. And there's a monthly newsletter. You can get involved. Okay. So I'm going to talk about the Arizona Independent Redistricting Commission and about initiatives, and then we're going to take a little bit of a break. So the Arizona Independent Redistricting Commission, the IRC, of course, we know, we've been through this in the last couple of years, the US Constitution requires a census every 10 years. It's in the US Constitution, mandates that congressional districts be examined after each census, and be redrawn as needed to ensure equitable representation. Gerrymandering happens when these rules are tinkered with to create districts that bolster the ruling party's chances in that state for success. And both parties have been guilty of this. So what we have in Arizona since 2000, which was a citizen initiative in the year 2000 to change the constitution of the state, is called the Independent Redistricting Commission. And I know that many of you were very involved in this and perhaps even went to meetings either online or in person in the middle of the plague last fall. The state's voters approved Prop 106 and amended the state's constitution to take redistricting power away from the legislature and give it to this independent commission. The legislature filed suit, and our system, our independent redistricting commission, withstood 2 US Supreme Court challenges, and it stands today. So the commissioners are appointed by legislators from their respective parties, and then the commissioner, that's 2 of each party, and then the commissioners then select a registered independent to be the chair. This didn't really work. This worked out pretty well in 2020, and it did not work out this time. I mean, in 2010, it worked out. So what happened here is that, well, I'm not going to really, I don't know enough about this, but I understand that the independent chair was not as independent as he was, we were led to believe. So what, on the face of it, what they're supposed to do is to redraw the congressional, federal, and legislative state districts to reflect the results of the most recent census. The census was probably flawed because of the plague. The concept of one person, one vote dictates that districts should be roughly equal in population, and there are a variety of other factors that go into the decision about it. But the important thing, and the thing that makes Arizona, well, it was anyway, the gold standard, is that they were required to start from scratch after every census, and not simply tinker with the current map. So if, I mean, I know what's happened in Arizona in the 30 years I've been here. I mean, this massive population boom, but only in certain places. So the most recent commission convened after the 2020 census and adopted new congressional and legislative districts. And we know what they are now. We thought maybe we were going to gain a 10th congressional seat. We did not. And then there's lawsuits going on right now, but eventually in a year or so, this commission will wrap up and another one will happen after the 2030 census. Doesn't that sound like really far away? 2030 census. This was the gold standard. It got perverted this year, I think. A good link about redistricting in the 50 states. I think I put it on the link, on the links page. It's from the National Consortium of State Legislatures, and it talks about redistricting. I'll make sure that that link gets in the chat. You can also go to azredistricting.org to find it. Now, the last thing I want to talk about before we take a quick break is the business of ballot initiatives, because this has been going on in our lives, has it not? Like forever. So in the United States, initiative is in use at the state level of state government in 24 states and the District of Columbia, and it's also in common use in local and city governments. The modern US system of initiative and referendum originated in Oregon in 1902, which was the progressive era that our Constitution came out of, when the state's legislators adopted it by an overwhelming majority. It sometimes, or was originally known as the Oregon system, spread to many other states. This is an example of key term, direct democracy, as opposed to representative democracy. Arizona has more categories and therefore more opportunity for direct democracy than any other US state. And it can, by constitutional amendment, any laws that are passed this way cannot be vetoed by the government. But as we have seen, they can be eaten away at by Republican legislators, but they cannot be vetoed by the governor. So the 100 series are constitutional amendments like Prop 106 in 2000, which was the Independent Redistricting Commission. The 200 series is initiated legislation. We saw that with Prop 208, which is now being gutted. The 300 series, which was it called 305 when we were repealing the voucher expansion a couple of years ago? Those are repeal referenda. And the 400 series, which is local stuff, state and county stuff. So we can use petitions to initiate legislation, either as a statute or as a constitutional amendment. We can repeal legislation, and that's called a referendum, not an initiative, where we get enough signatures saying we think this is a bad law, bad governance, and we want it put on the ballot for the voters to decide. That's a repeal referendum. The number of signatures required to qualify an initiative for the Arizona ballot is tied to the number of votes cast for the office. This is like a magical formula, the office of governor in the most recent gubernatorial election. And it goes down. So for a veto referendum, you only need 5% of the number of people who voted for the governor. For initiated constitutional amendment, it's 15, and for initiated state statute, it's 10. A good source for learning more about this is on Ballotpedia, which is also on your page of links. Laws governing the initiative process in Arizona gives a whole history of it. So, is everyone awake? Are we good? Do we have
Yes,
questions?
we do have some questions, Greer.
Yeah.
So it looks like Beth said that she does have a question, but she did not actually put her question. Beth, would you like to unmute to ask your question?
What am I doing here?
Sure.
You said earlier.
can you?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, my question for Greer is, if you follow this stuff and you follow the legislative session, how do you or others of your ilk maintain your sanity, your positivity, your ability to keep working on this stuff as you watch bills that are complete lunacy pass our legislature? And I'm not making a joke.
No, I know you're not.
I wanted to start a legislative committee of Cokes Off Campus. And by the time we got to this part, by the time I got around to getting it started, I was so disillusioned with the work that I didn't significantly follow through. So.
Well, Bets, thank you for that question. I see you as one of the mighty soldiers that I know, the mightiest soldiers that I know. I graduated from high school in 1974, and Nixon pretty much set the tone of what I thought about politics and politicians. I don't know how I keep going. I play the ukulele, and frankly, doing sessions like this where I'm telling people that the basic blocks of how to approach it and how to look at it, that energizes me. If you read American history, this is not the worst time we've been through. Read about the 1920s. And I think that we have an incredible opportunity here to vote for a Democratic governor. I don't think we're going to win the legislature because I don't know really what I think of the Arizona. I don't know what I take a dim view of sort of what the state party's doing, but I do believe that we can all get out there and bust our butts for a Democratic governor. I think that is the only thing that is going to keep us from irreparable harm, because if we have a Democratic governor and a Democratic governor vetoes this lousy legislation coming out of the Republican legislature, there's no way to override the veto. I mean, a veto is a good veto now because there's no majorities. I mean, it's not like we're overwhelmingly Republican in our legislature, and that if, say, Katie Hobbs is the governor and she vetoes something, no one's going to override that. I mean, they're split one seat, and it seems terrible that we can't get that one seat majority back. But we haven't had a majority in the House of Representatives in the state of Arizona since 1965.
Wow.
So it, you know, we're fighting the same fight that, you know, our grandparents were fighting. So I know you just keep soldiering on. Learn how to
Yeah.
play the ukulele.
Yep. All right. Thank you, Bets. Lance Ussery is asking, wondering what you think of the multi-member legislative districts. I moved from Oregon, which has separate House and Senate district boundaries. Pros and cons of what we do here in Arizona.
You know, I think it's very weird. I don't think, but unfortunately, that's how the Constitution set it up, and I don't really know why that is. I mean, when this Constitution was set up, I think there were so few people who lived here, and so I don't know. I don't think it's good. I don't think it's a check and balance. It's just basically like it's almost like a unicameral legislature, and it just I think it makes us, it mires us in the mud, but I don't see any effort to change that in any way.
Mm-hmm. Teresa Wyatt asks, why isn't the IRC larger than 5 members? Most states who have an IRC have more than 5 members, even those with smaller populations than Arizona. Would it require legislation to enlarge the IRC? Gail has already responded by saying the size of the IRC was decided as part of the citizen initiative process, and that the state constitution would need to be changed to change the number of members.
However, I will also say, I believe everything Gail says, and but I do know that last year and possibly the year before, legislation was floated to expand it to something like 19 people. And I don't know how that was going to happen. I know Ducey was in favor of that. Gail, can you remember that?
I don't think there were 19 members, but yes, I do remember them trying it. These guys don't care whether stuff is legal or not. They just do it.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, so no, I agree. I think it should be a lot larger. I do, but not the way they wanted to do it. They wanted to expand it, but it was going to give Ducey all this power to appoint these people. And the last thing I want is more Ducey appointees on it.
Mm-hmm. Also, I think Lance, he's now unmuted himself. Lance, do you have another question? Lance? Or maybe he's gone now. Okay. All right, we'll wait for Lance to come back. And let's see, Bets asks, what is the strategy behind not appearing at candidate forums for Katie Hobbs? Oh, Lance. Sorry about that, Lance. I tried to, you were unmuted for a second. Give me 1 second. Ask to unmute. All right, try it now.
Yeah, sorry
There
about that. No, I just ignored it the first time because someone else was talking. So appreciate it. Just piggybacking, I mean, just continuing off my first question, which was
Oh, we lost you, Lance.
Lance, don't mute yourself.
all right. I don't think I am. I'm trying not to. Is there any history of past legislation like changing the legislative districts? And is that something that can be done on a citizen like petition level? Is that something that can be like brought to Constitution?
Something's tickling at my mind of, yes, there was something that was floated last year or this year about expanding the number of legislative districts. Does anyone else remember that? And I can't remember the details of it, but what I can do is I can make a note to ask Pam Powers Hanley.
There was a move to split Maricopa County into multiple.
Oh yeah,
districts.
that's right. Weren't they talking about actually making another county?
Yeah, they wanted to split it into like 3 or 4 counties, I
Or
think.
Oh, okay.
put all those crazy
not legislative.
Tohono O'odham in their own county. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it gets floated all the time, Lance, but that's the kind of thing that's never going to get any traction. Everyone's got their reason for doing it or for not doing it. I don't know. I wouldn't know how it could be done. I don't think the 30 legislative districts is actually, I can't remember if that number is in the Constitution. So it might just be legislation that could do it. Sort of like the fact that there are 435 members of the House of Representatives, but that number is legislative. That's not in the Constitution. So I have a sense that perhaps that number might be a legislative function.
All right, and unfortunately he was muted again, but thank you, Lance, for your for your question. All right, and it is 7:31. We did have one final question from Bets saying, what is the strategy behind not appearing at candidate forums for Katie Hobbs?
I don't know.
And yeah, I wish I knew.
I don't pretend to understand politicians. So I just look at what they do, and I don't know the answer to that. Sorry.
Yeah. All right.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
that looks like all of our questions.
okay, do we want to take a 5-minute break? 10? What do you want to do, Miranda or folks?
This is your show.
What we have to do
break
is we
is
have to
good.
get through the federal government and the state and local government, but I think I can do that easily. If we want to come back at let's come back at 7:40.
Okay, that sounds good.
Okay.
I think I will pause the recording then.
Okay.
And then we'll resume after.
Okay, 7:40. All right, see you later. Because I think it was so important. So we're going to pick up where we left off.
And Greer, there's a
Um,
question that was put in the chat while we were on our
Oh.
break. It says, why are all or the elected offices for the state up for election in the same year? Why aren't the terms staggered?
Well, I don't know the answer to that. I know the ACC obviously is staggered. I have no idea how other states do this. I think that in a lot of states, the state offices all come due at the same time, but maybe I'm wrong. I mean, I've lived here for a long time, and that's really kind of Arizona is the only thing I know. Does somebody else know how other states do it? You'll have to unmute yourself. So I don't know. If someone comes up with an answer, we can talk about it. Okay, let's just get started again. So what I'm going to talk about in this second half is the structure of the federal government, which a lot of us know a lot more than we know the Arizona government. So I'm just going to get started just basically with some facts and figures. July 4th, 1776, Declaration of Independence. This was the Second Continental Congress. Appeal to King George III and his answer. We all saw Hamilton, right? And they signed it. And what was on the line for them when they signed it? It was an act of treason. I'm going to see if I can get myself onto the screen here. I can't actually see myself. Hold on a second.
You did go away.
I went away.
There you are.
Am I there?
You're
Okay.
there.
I'm just trying to get so that I can see. Only thing I do, I see Gail, I see your mask up front. I don't know why I don't see myself. Okay. So for the signers of the Declaration of Independence, it was an act of treason. And I don't know if you know what the punishment was for treason in the 18th century, but it wasn't good. And hi, Gail, I see you. Okay. Then the war against England was over with the Treaty of Paris in 1783. And in 1789, the US Constitution was ratified, superseding the old Articles of Confederation. So the Constitution, what is it? It is the United States government is a democratic republic based on the principles of federalism, in which power is shared between the federal government and the state governments. And the interpretation and execution of the principle of federalism, including what powers the federal government has and how those powers should be exercised, have been debated since the very beginning of our republic, ever since the adoption of the Constitution. Some will make the case for expanded federal powers, while others argue for a more limited role for the central government in relation to individuals and the states and other recognized entities. This is a very simple statement of a very complex situation that involves just loomingly large the problem of the issue of slavery, and how in the first decades of our republic it was shaped by those who owned human beings and those who did not own human beings. So the Constitution is interpreted, supplemented, and implemented by a large body of constitutional law and has influenced the constitutions of many other nations. When it was adopted by the people's representatives as a republic of laws, it was unique upon the earth. It is no longer unique upon the earth. It has been amended 27 times, unlike the Arizona state constitution, which has been amended 157 times. The Constitution provides that an amendment may be proposed either by Congress with a 2/3 majority of both houses, or by a constitutional convention called for by 2/3 of the state legislatures. We have not ever had a constitutional convention since the very first one. The first 10 amendments are known now as the Bill of Rights. One of the theoretical pillars of the United States Constitution is the idea of checks and balances among the powers and responsibilities of the co-equal 3 branches of the American government: the executive, the legislative, and the judiciary. They are co-equal, which I spent a great deal of time reminding my elected representatives of in 2017 and 2018. In Great Britain, at the time the Constitution was drafted, the king had the power to prorogue Parliament, which means to suspend it. The drafters of the Constitution took pains to ensure that proroguing could not happen in the United States. Likewise, an independent judiciary became of high importance in the early years of the Republic. And the case is known as Marbury v. Madison in 1803, when the Supreme Court announced for the first time the principle that the court may declare an act of Congress void if it is inconsistent with the Constitution. So here's some examples of what checks and balances do. Congress has the power to create law, but there's no law until the executive, the president, signs it. The executive can veto legislation, which in turn can be overridden by Congress. The president nominates judges to the highest court, but these nominees must be approved by the Senate. The Supreme Court has the power to invalidate, after briefing and argument, as unconstitutional any law passed by Congress. This is supposed to work in a smooth way. I can't even begin to address the stuff that's going on right now with the Supreme Court specifically. I'm just going to tell you the way this is supposed to work. So the executive branch consists of the president and those to whom the president's powers are delegated, such as the cabinet. When we talk about the cabinet, we're talking about Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, all the secretaries of. Again, we saw Hamilton. Originally, there was the Treasurer and the Treasury and War Department. I think those were the only 2 departments. This is not set forth in the Constitution. It is a matter of, I don't know if it's legislative or whether it's executive order. But the president is both the head of state and the head of the government, as well as the military commander-in-chief and the chief diplomat. And he is supposed to take care that the laws be faithfully executed. And he's supposed to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution. As I said, we know more about this now than we did 5 years ago, don't we, folks? The president can sign legislation passed by Congress. He can unilaterally sign treaties that then have to be ratified in the Senate. He may be impeached. We know more about this than we did, didn't we? By a simple majority in the House, and removed from office, convicted, by a 2/3 majority in the Senate. We saw that happen twice. That was historical. We saw part of that happen twice. He may not dissolve Congress or call special elections. And of course, he can pardon and do executive orders. The day-to-day enforcement and administration of federal laws is in the hands of various federal executive departments, Secretary of, created by Congress to handle specific areas of national and international affairs. So there are 15 departments chosen by the president, approved with the advice and consent of the Senate. They form a council known informally as the cabinet. And there was also staff organizations such as National Security Council, Office of Management and Budget, and others, which are grouped into the executive office of the president. So there's the White House staff, there's the chief of staff. The chief of staff does not have to be approved by Senate. He's simply appointed by the president. And the employees in these US government offices, agencies, and departments are known as federal civil servants. That's a term you will use. As I said before, the cabinet members are nominated by the president and must be confirmed by a simple majority of the Senate. And the only exceptions to the cabinet members who are elected that way are the chief of staff, who's appointed, and of course the vice president, who's elected in a ticket with the president. So the cabinet, I won't run through the 15 or however many it is departments, but you can look that up on Wikipedia. So the US holds a presidential election every 4 years. There's a limit of 2 consecutive terms for the president, at least since the 1940s. There is, of course, a complex 18th century institution known as the Electoral College that we know far more about than we did 5 years ago, that actually elects the president in the weeks following the popular election. We do not actually directly elect our president. We vote for a slate of electors that are selected in a variety of ways by the states. Because of the way it is set up, it has happened 5 times in US history that the Electoral College elected the loser of the popular vote. It has happened twice in the last 22 years. That would be 2000 and 2016. There are things called executive orders, which we saw a great deal of. I do not think Donald Trump holds the record for executive orders. I believe Franklin Roosevelt is the all-time winner of that. They are simply presidential directives issued to agents of the executive departments by their boss. They have the full force of law until they are proved to be against the law or against the Constitution. A very famous executive order was the Emancipation Proclamation. This goes into more detail than I want to put. So your influence in the executive branch, of course, is voting in presidential preference elections or primaries, as we call them, and general elections, expressing your opinion in calls and writing to the White House, and also commenting on new regulations and changes to regulations proposed by the various federal agencies or departments at regulations.gov. These departments are not required to take into account everything that everybody says, but if you are someone with some expertise, for example, on water policy or anything else, you can make a comment and it can be taken into consideration. If you just have an emotional response to a regulation, I wouldn't waste my time doing that. But if you actually have substantive knowledge, I encourage you to go to regulations.gov when you know that such a regulation is pending. So, as we know, when we have a president, there's not much we can do about it. We're stuck with that president for the 4 years, unless Congress decides to impeach him. And again, that has to rely on the people we vote into our legislature. So the president is the president until our legislature removes him or her. And and again, we know more about that than we used to. So I wanted to talk about the legislative branch, but I'm going to talk about the judiciary really quick. The stack in the judiciary, we have absolutely no control over who gets to be a judge except who we vote for to the Senate. And the Senate confirms the judges. And again, the Republicans in the Senate have played a very, very long game here. And they are, when they are appointed for life. And they're appointed by the president and confirmed by the Senate. There are 9 justices on the Supreme Court, as we know, and they must be confirmed, and they are also appointed for life. So the stack goes district court, there are 94 district courts. Some larger states with larger populations have like a middle district and a northern district and the southern district. Arizona has the one district, but we have two divisions. So there's 94 district courts, 13 appellate courts. We are in the 9th Circuit here in Arizona, and of course the Supreme Court. Your vote for senator really, really, really matters in the judiciary. There is a U.S. attorney in each of the 94 districts, again, appointed by the president, usually with the recommendation of the home state senators and approved by the Senate for a 4-year term. They are also known as federal prosecutors. And they represent the United States federal government in U.S. district courts and the United States Courts of Appeal. They are members of the Department of Justice. So law cases work their way through the case, through the laws, through the courts. So if you have a case that has to do with, a homicide case, that's going to go to state court. But if you have something to do with federal tax evasion, federal drug laws, immigration laws, securities fraud, some kinds of securities fraud, that's going to all happen through the federal court system. So, for example, if you're called for jury duty, most people are called for superior court jury duty, 1 day or 1 trial. If you're called for federal jury duty, often you are called for an entire week or more. So it's important to know that, as these cases work their way up and they get to the appellate court and they get remanded back to the trial court, or they get appealed up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, of course, does not have to take every petition for cert that it gets. So I have a statistic for the term of 2010, 2011, 7,000 petitions were submitted, and the court heard only 79 of them. They're going to pick the ones that are most important, and that's where we find ourselves today with the Mississippi case and Roe v. Wade. So that is, again, your influence in the federal judiciary is who you vote for senator and who you vote for president. So let's talk about the legislative branch. So it's bicameral, meaning 2 houses comprising the House of Representatives and the Senate. Congress makes the laws. A session of Congress lasts 2 years. We are currently in the, is that right? First session? Yes, the first session of the 117th Congress, and it started in January 2021 and will end in January 2023. Each state elects 2 senators. Each state elects a number of representatives. At the very minimum, it elects 1 representative, and that's for states that have very small populations. We in Arizona, we have 9 congressional districts, and so we elect 9 members of the House of Representatives. Your voter registration card, your new one, tells you what congressional district you're in. The House and the Senate each have particular powers. Any laws that have to do with revenue must originate in the House of Representatives. The powers of Congress are limited to those enumerated in the Constitution, and all other powers are reserved to states and the people. That's just sort of a rote thing. There's a necessary and proper clause which grants Congress the power to make all laws that shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers. So this came to the fore a couple of years ago when people were calling on Congress to pass a special counsel law to protect the Mueller investigation. It was a check and balance on executive power. That didn't get anywhere. So House currently consists of 435 voting members, and they each represent a congressional district. So if we could have more congressional districts, that's a matter of legislation. I mean, it's a matter of the formula by which, so we have a formula now. It says this is the census, and this is how many people, and we're going to give you each, we're going to have these 9 congressional districts, but that could change. They could expand. that 435 voting members seems like a very small number to me. A person elected in the House of Representatives is referred to as a representative or as a congresswoman or congressman. Based on the state's population, they each have a 2-year term. They're always running. They run every 2 years, as opposed to the Senate, which of course is 6 years. And so basically the entire House of Representatives, like the Arizona legislature, is up for election every 2 years. It is not staggered. Every 2 years, they're all up for re-election. There is currently a Democratic majority in the House of 221 to 208. That is not a large majority, and we need to hold on to that with everything we've got. There's currently no term limits in the House of Representatives. There are also some non-voting members of various territories and Puerto Rico. The Speaker of the House is the presiding officer of the United States House of Representatives, and that's of course Nancy Pelosi, Democrat of California. She is also, she's the political and parliamentary leader of the House of Representatives. She is also a lot of things. She's the House presiding officer, leader of the majority party, and the institution's administrative head. She's also second in line to the presidency after the vice president. She personally usually does not preside over the normal day-to-day stuff in the House. They will do a pro tem leader because she's got other fish to fry. The party with the most members elects a majority leader, who is Steny Hoyer, Democrat of Maryland, and the other party elects a minority leader, who is Kevin McCarthy, Republican of California. The majority leader usually schedules legislative business on the House floor, and the minority leader serves as the spokesperson for the minority party. They're selected by their respective caucuses. There are also whips, majority and minority whips, who whip the votes. They go out and they make sure they've got the votes to pass a piece of legislation. Everyone in the House is on a committee. You can find out what committee your representative sits on by looking them up on, I think it's just house.gov. If there's a vacancy in the House, by constitutional mandate, it is filled by special election in the state where the vacancy is. The House is really our we the people thing. They get elected every 2 years. They are always running. They're always courting the vote. They're always raising money. And this is where the power of the people really lies. And that is what the writers of the Constitution intended. The Senate now. The Senate is made up of 2 senators from each state, regardless of population, which kind of throws it a little weird into balance, because there's 2 senators from California and 2 senators from South Dakota. And you wonder, direct election of senators has only been in effect since 1913, which is the 17th Amendment to the US Constitution. Before that, they were elected by the individual state legislatures. And there is a call to go back to that system, but they'd have to repeal the 17th Amendment. So I don't know how that is going to go. Senators are called senator. They are not called congressman or congresswoman. So there are 100 of them who each serve 6-year terms in the government, and approximately 1/3 of them stands for election every 2 years. So if they don't all replace at the same time, they go in chunks. And there's currently no term limits on the number of terms a senator may serve. In 2022, there are 24 seats up for regular election in the Senate. Our current senators are Kyrsten Sinema, who's a Democrat. So she says, who was elected in 2018 to a 6-year term. Her seat, that was Jeff Flake's seat. She is called the senior senator from Arizona. Her seat becomes up for election in 2024. The junior member is Mark Kelly, also a Democrat, who was elected, beating appointed Senator Martha McSally in 2020 in a special election to fill John McCain's seat. Because McCain's seat would be up for election in 2022, Mark Kelly is having to run again for the second time in 2 years for that same seat. If he wins this time, he's in for 6 years. The exclusive power of the Senate is advise and consent, and that is the confirmation of many important presidential appointments, cabinet officers, federal judges, department secretaries, military and naval officers, and ambassadors. The Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris, is the president of the Senate. and cast the vote to break any ties in Senate voting. The reason this is so critical is because there are 50 out of 100, there are 50 Republicans in the Senate. There are 48 Democrats and 2 independents who caucus with the Democrats. So that comes to a 50-50 split, in practically speaking. So Kamala Harris is needed to break a tie if there is a tie. There's also a president pro tem who sits there when the VP is doing her other things. As in the House, there's a majority leader, Chuck Schumer, Democrat of New York, and a minority leader, Mitch McConnell, Republican of Kentucky, and their whips. Now, if there is a vacancy in the Senate, that is not dealt with in the, well, that's not dealt with in the original Constitution. It's dealt with in the 17th Amendment. As we saw the special election in 2020, there are different rules in different states on how replacements are voted for senators. So how a bill becomes law is a standard thing. We know this, introduced by the member, referred to committee, hearings, subcommittees, the committee votes, send it to the floor, which it gets voted on, it gets placed on a calendar, debate, vote, conference committee, sent to the president to sign into law. Of course, the president can veto, but a veto can only be overridden by 2/3, I think it's 2/3 majority. Even the threat of a veto can often bring changes to the legislation. So if the president signals that he is going to veto the bill, they sometimes won't put it to a vote. They'll tinker with it and try to make it more acceptable. Your influence in Congress is voting in the elections, primary elections, general elections, calling, visiting, writing, faxing, emailing your representative in the House. Visiting is very important. If you can make yourself known in the local office of your representative, your voice is going to be more powerful than if you're just, resist botting or emailing. Your vote for people in federal offices affects issues like funding, environmental regulations, arts funding, Medicare, Medicaid, defense, national parks, federal highways, immigration, and most importantly, confirmation of executive appointments. That's what's on my mind these days. Okay, so that's a very, very quick, I know that's the civics that most of you already all know. I'm going to talk very quickly about Indian tribes because I found there was some confusion about this. In the United States, an Indian tribe, Native American tribe, indigenous nation, or similar concept is any extant or historical clan, tribe, nation, or other group in the United States. So it's a term of art. Federally recognized Indian tribe is the term of art. In Arizona, there are 21 federally recognized Indian nations or tribes. Each tribe and nation exists in unique ways. You need to look them up to see what their relationship to the federal government is. Tohono O'odham Nation exists by executive order. The Pascua Yaqui tribe exists as an entity by legislation. The Navajo Nation is by treaty, executive order, and legal judgments. And the Hopi Nation is by executive order, and that's just a few of them. The Indian Citizenship Act of 1924, also known as the Snyder Act, granted full US citizenship to the indigenous peoples of the United States, who were called Indians in the act. However, many of them didn't really ever get to vote until the more overwhelming civil rights legislation was passed in the 60s. So here's your takeaway about our indigenous neighbors. They are citizens of the United States. They are citizens of Arizona and of the counties and locales where they live. They can participate in their own nation's elections and the governance of their own tribes. Not all of them live on reservations. And if they don't, they can still be members of their tribes or nations by the rules governing those memberships. They can be enrolled. But it's very important to remember that even though they are indigenous, even though they're living on the reservation, they are all still citizens of the state, county, and country that they live in. And I fielded some very interesting questions about that, but that is your takeaway for that. Are there any questions about that incredibly fast précis of the federal government?
Not a one.
Yes, I think really people are dropping like flies here. Okay, really quickly, here's a little bit about our local government. So all residents of Pima County live in a supervisor district. All cities of Tucson residents also live in a city council ward. Residents of incorporated towns such as Marana, Sahuarita, Oro Valley have their own elected town governments, but still have elected representatives in the county they live in. So there are all these layers. So I'm going to talk about Pima County and the city of Tucson really quickly, but if you don't live in that city, or if you're in an unincorporated area, you can look up the kind of local government you have. So of course, Tucson is the county seat of Pima County. It's what's known as a charter city, as opposed to a general law city. And this was set forth in the Constitution. It's supposed to have the power for home rule and promulgating unique laws and regulations. And that's why we have our weird elections in off years, because we can. It sits within Pima County, and there is some overlap of powers and services between the city and the county. Tucson follows what is known in political science as the weak mayor model of the council manager form of government. There's a 6-member city council, holds exclusive legislative authority, and shares executive authority with the mayor, who is elected by the voters independently of the council. They appoint a city manager who is responsible for day-to-day operations. That's an employee. And the mayor, Regina Romero, now presides over city council meetings and acts as the official representative of the city of Tucson at the state, national, international level. The council members and the mayor serve 4-year terms, which is staggered. There are no term limits. Their council members, this is one of the weirdo things we do. It's just wild and wacky. Council members are nominated by their wards via a ward level primary, but the top vote earners then compete at large in the city. So in my Ward 2, Paul Cunningham, we elect him in the primary, but then everyone in Tucson can vote for Paul Cunningham. This system is constantly under attack by the state legislature, but I believe it's even gone to the Supreme Court of the United States. We can still do it. We are a charter city. There are other charter cities, which were pretty much the cities that existed before statehood. So they are Phoenix, I think Mesa is a charter city, Bisbee, Flagstaff, Prescott, Yuma. You can look up what are the charter cities of Arizona. You know, but we come under attack. So when we tried to do a gun buyback, or Bisbee tried to ban plastic bags, the legislature sued them, and we were not able to succeed in that. So that's another sort of power balancing thing that we're always trying to deal with here in Tucson. The city of Tucson is a complex governmental entity. It administers many important civic functions, such as water and sewer, parking, graffiti, parks and rec, firefighting, cops, city taxes, all the things that basically make life livable in Tucson. There is a tucsonaz.gov website where you can find lots of information about the various services, and also where you can find a list of boards and commissions that citizens are invited to apply to be on. For instance, there is a Parks and Rec Commission, there's a Public Art Commission, there's a Pedestrian Safety Commission. And I encourage everybody, because there's almost always vacancies on these commissions and boards. Your voter registration card will show you what ward you live in, what city ward. There were some changes in this last redistricting. School district governing boards, known as school boards, they're an important local governmental entity. The Pima County School Superintendent's Office is a constitutionally mandated office with specific statutory mandates and authorities. That's Article 11 of the state constitution. There is an elected superintendent of schools. Dustin Williams was reelected in 2020. Pima County is divided into 17 school districts and 1 community college district. And if you look on your voter ID card, it'll tell you what school district you are paying taxes in. So members of each school district are elected for 4-year terms under nonpartisan elections, which is kind of interesting. These, I call them school boards, but the real word is school district governing boards, oversee all schools in their jurisdiction, including district schools, charter schools, private schools, home schools, and virtual schools. So virtual schools, I think, may even be like the education system that's in the juvenile detention system. They have the superintendent's office has fiscal responsibilities, informational responsibilities, etc. But the real meat in this is your individual school board. And I have to say that the Republicans are like they did in 2010 with the Tea Party. The Republicans have a very targeted plan for basically occupying school boards. And so we encourage everybody to just go, whether it's virtual or in person, go to school board meetings and see what the heck is going on, because this is where the critical race theory stuff is happening. This is where, you know, banning books is happening. This is the real grassroots, is your school board. And we encourage everybody to pay attention, get to know some school board members who can tell you what's going on, and go to those meetings, represent yourself there. Schools.pima.gov will give you more information about that. And lastly, Pima County, there is a 5-member Pima County Board of Supervisors responsible for steering public policy in the region. They are elected to 4-year terms. It's not staggered. Every 4 years, they are all up for re-election, most recently in 2020. There are no term limits. In addition to overseeing delivery a host of municipal services from roads and parks and libraries, they are also responsible for approving the county budget. And they set and levy the amount of primary property tax and taxes for the library system and flood control. Everything else is happening at the state level or at the the fire district level or the school board level. But the county does the budget, and it does property taxes and library and flood control. I think a really interesting training would be like a real breakdown of what is on your tax bill and what are all those entities you're paying taxes to. In addition to the 5 supervisors, there are other Pima County elected officials, all elected in 2020. And they are the assessor, who does real estate valuation, county attorney, which prosecutes Pima County cases in Arizona Superior Court, which is the state court, county recorder, which is voter reg, elections, recording of documents, superintendent of schools, sheriff, and treasurer. Your voter registration card tells you what supervisor district you reside in. And again, some of those borders changed in this last redistricting. The Pima County government website, I don't think is very good, but you can go look at it. I think it's on your links. And you know what? I think we have come to the end of this in under 2 hours. It's a miracle. So I'm going to just wrap up. Does anyone have any questions about any of that?
There are none in the chat.
I knew it. Okay, I'm just going to tell you a few things you already know, you PCs and volunteers out there, and you can just repeat this to anyone who will listen. It is your right and responsibility to vote and be informed. It is your responsibility to vote the whole ballot, including ones you don't know that much about because you need to find out about them, like the ACC and the county treasurer. Informational pamphlets are sent out before each election. Take a look. Look who has endorsed the candidates. If it's an organization and you don't know why they're endorsing them, call the organization and talk to them about why they have that position. Talk to your friends. Find out someone who's informed. Get the story, because nothing comes between you and your intellect in the ballot box except what you put there. Choose to be on the early voting list. Gail, what is it called now?
It's called evil.
Evil, which means what?
Early voter list.
Okay. Basically, it was permanent and they depermanentized it. But basically, if you vote in every single election, you should never be purged. But if you miss a primary or miss a city election or something, you don't want to give them any opportunity. And of course, if you are purged, you simply re-register. So when research shows that when you get your ballot early, you are more likely to vote. You can tell that to anyone you canvass. It takes away the exigencies of your car breaking down, the babysitter not showing up, And you can always go to the county recorder's office and ask to be on this list or ask to be taken off this list, and you can check your registration. And if you have any questions about civics or about what this office does or that office does, you can look it up. Wikipedia and Ballotpedia. I know Wikipedia can be very unreliable on things that require an opinion, but on things like what is the structure of the city government of Tucson, it is almost always right. Ballotpedia has got just tons and tons and tons of articles about the oddest things, very good sources of information. You can call your local political party headquarters. You can call me and I can find out for you or tell you where to go. Get informed and stay informed and be a voter. And that's the message we need to give to everyone whose door we knock. You know, people say, oh, I'm not interested in politics. You're like, well, are you interested in the roads? Are you interested in the libraries? Do you go to the park? You're interested in politics. We have to make people understand it's the air we breathe. Anybody? Bravo. Thank you, everybody, for coming. And I did put my name and my info in the chat, so please text me if you want to talk about anything. Okay, are we good? I think we are.
We're good on this end.
Okay. Listen, thanks everyone. If Linda's still on, thank you for setting this up. And thank you, Gail and Miranda, for fielding the chat. And I hope I see everyone again next January when we train on the request to speak system.